Coming up in this episode.
What was your favourite subject in school, Bob?
Well, actually, my favourite subject in school was geology, study of rocks and fossils. So I got an O-level in geology. The dividends it's paid working in logistics has been amazing.
The Logistics Collective podcast is a series focused on the logistics industry, where there are many incredible stories to be told. We'll be speaking with those who've worked and are working within the industry today. What have been their experiences, good and bad, since joining, and would they recommend a career in the industry to others? Here's your host, Malcolm Pope.
Hello and welcome to the next edition of the Logistics Collective, the podcast. Today I have somebody really interesting, and it's a bit different for me because it's somebody that I have over a couple of decades have worked with on a number of occasions. He's one of the best operational leaders that I know. He's a really great people person. His name is Bob Richards, and he works for TPN, the Pallet Network. And I've got to apologise in public, Bob, because I caused you such sadness when we first met, because I asked you the question, why is everybody over 40 from Birmingham called Bob? And you said to me, well, it was like, go away. And he says, I'm not from Birmingham, I'm from the Black Country. I'm not over 40. And so I got a bit of rightly chastised for that. That was fine, but it got us really started. So, I mean, Bob, you're Ops Director for TPN at the moment. You've been Head of Ops for PHS Group. You've been GM in Bidvest, and you've also done some consultancy for them. You've been Divisional GM for Palletways. You've been GM for David Hathaway. I know you did some work for the wonderful and sadly departed Hilary DeVay in Pallex. And where I first met you, you were in Heinz, ensconced in the mildly chaotic world of their food service warehouse in Telford. That's how we found it. And so,
Absolutely.
Bob, I'm going to stop flapping my gums and say, welcome to you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Malcolm. Thank you very much. Really great to speak to you.
Now you're welcome. So, come on, Bob. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
So, I tell you what, do you know what? As I get older, I think the superpower that I would really love is a photographic memory.
Okay.
And just purely, there's so much stuff that I've come across in my life, personal life and working life, that I wished I could just remember. So, that would definitely be my superpower.
I am blessed with a very good memory, and I do remember at the Telford Distribution Centre, it was your birthday, and somebody said that you looked a little bit like Beaker of the Muppets, and so
absolutely
they put everything around your office. You had more pictures of Beaker than anything else. So apologies for the embarrassment, but here we go.
No, it was good fun, mate. It was good fun.
So tell us a little more about what you do now. What's your role all about?
Okay, so I joined TPN. I've been here just over a year. Was, as you said, I was doing some consultancy work prior to that, and sort of working for myself. And I'd always said if the right opportunity come along with the right business, with the right culture, that I would, take that step back into being gainfully employed, if you like, for want of a better description. So my role at TPN is as Operations Director. I'm responsible for their hub in Minworth. We move round about, on average, 23,000 pallets per day to every postcode destination across the UK. We do that via a network of 129 different logistics companies across 143 locations.
Wow.
It's a hub and spoke network, and it's made up with some fantastic businesses. It's really good.
So what does working in the logistics industry mean to you?
Okay, so I think for me, I fell into logistics. I'm an engineer, I'm a toolmaker.
Did it hurt when you did?
It did, yeah. So, and I ended up with being in the Black Country, Malcolm, as you quite mentioned earlier. The manufacturing industry, died, ended up with a driving licence, got a job driving a truck for Christian Salverson, and the rest was history, really. And I find I come across lots of people who stumble into the logistics business, and working in this industry. You've either got to sit. I'm sat in the boardroom at TPN talking to you now, and everything that sits in this room has been on a truck at some point in its life.
It's true.
So yeah, it is. So the fact, I've worked in the food industry, I've worked in the industrial sectors, and the fact that we're responsible for getting everything to point of sale or to our customer end user. It just excites me every day.
Okay. Now, I'm trying to get into my mind an image of Bob as a child. You know, the little shorts, the long socks, all of that.
All of that.
Yeah, I want to know, what was your dream job when you were a kid?
So, actually, when I was about 7 years old, I had this burning desire to have a drum kit. And I kept on about this drum kit for about 2 years until my mum and dad...
It was wrong. You weren't Beaker, you were Animal.
I was Animal, mate.
Okay.
I was Animal.
Fine.
And I kept on about this drum kit for a couple of years until my mum and dad finally got fed up with me and bought me a small drum kit. That was it. I wanted to be the drummer of Led Zepp or Black Sabbath or, you know. I do play drums now.
I've seen you.
Sundays a month.
No, I've seen you. I've seen you.
You know, but which is great. But it's that would have been my ideal career. Would have been a career in music, not singing because I don't sing very well, but music definitely.
Give you an opportunity now to no. Okay, we'll move on.
Definitely not.
Okay, so why are you so passionate about your role at TPN?
The role that I've got currently in TPN is a real opportunity for me to share some of the skills that I've developed over the years I've worked in this industry. But more than that, I'm actually working with some quite young teams of people. You know, the average probably age of the operations team that work in the hub is probably 28. You know, my cohort on nights, which is a bigger cohort, the management team on nights are all 40 or under. While some of the forklift truck drivers are a little bit older, you know, there's a relatively young cohort of people. And actually, it's a joy. I mean, we've been on TPN regional meetings for the last 4 days all around the country, meeting with the partners, talking to them about the exciting developments in our business. And actually, in logistics, you tend to see people who are second or third generation. They're the only young people that tend to come through, certainly at our level in the industry. But it was really nice to see so many young people and younger faces at the meetings. And for me, that's the joy of the job. It's that people engagement. It's developing people, helping them build relationships with people. Sometimes you've got to have a difficult conversation, but actually, you know, if people understand what the rules of the game are, then actually it makes it a great working place for everybody to be.
Couldn't agree more with you, Bob. So, what's been your best career experience so far? What was the pinnacle? Telford, without shadow of a doubt for me. Telford was an amazing time in my life. It was brilliant. Loved it. Loved every second of it. And we spent a lot of seconds inside that place at Telford. You know, from walking in that first day and thinking, oh, what have I done? To, you know, I'll tell you this story, Malcolm, because I don't know if you remember this, but I was working for a gentleman called Ian Sutherland. He'd not long joined the Hines family at the time. I remember. I remember Mr. Sutherland. I had some lovely meetings with him.
Indeed, and a phone call came through and somebody in the office says, I've got Ian on the phone for you. I went, put him on hold while I get to my desk, and I picked the receiver up and he went, why have you got that tune on that phone? And apparently the hold music, when you phoned into Telford DC, which was on its backside at the time, was Mission Impossible. And it was just great.
No, you see, that sort of challenges my own initials, which are MIP, which I always say mission is possible. So, but no, it for sure was a good time, and I think that's, for me, also one of the highlights of my career, whereby you felt you'd made the most impact in the right way whilst keeping people with you and actually giving back to those people and doing everything as well as you possibly can. There was a lot of heart and soul, as well as a lot of hard work and planning and logic that went into that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know, for sure. So we've heard the best.
Yeah.
What's the worst?
So I think probably one of the worst experiences in my working life was actually not when I left Hines and Wincanton, and I went to work for TDG. Whilst I worked for a super guy at TDG in Sean Foley, he was great and he had amazing vision with what he wanted to do with that business. But we just spent our life being battered by the customer.
I never battered you.
So, no, apart from the little bit we did for Heinz, but the general customer that we dealt with.
No, you did a really important bit for Heinz in that circumstance. If that external cross dock centre hadn't have been put in, I'm absolutely sure that pre-NDC, I'm pretty sure it would have fallen over. So it was an important piece that was actually done within that. So I
think the biggest challenge in that business was that unfortunately, the people who were running that business at the time didn't really have a fantastic vision of where they wanted to go with it. I think there's massive disparity between board level and what was actually reality, and the people were so resistant to change.
Yeah, I still remember the chairman's Daimler with TDG1 on it. That really made a good impression coming into
Indeed.
the head office. But hey ho.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of stories in the background, and look, there were a lot of people in TDG that I had a huge amount of respect for. It's all of these organisations are large, and they're all a bit curate eggy, so they are good. There's a lot of good parts, and there's some stinkers as well, and that's the case for every organisation. What was your favourite subject in school, Bob?
Well, actually, my favourite subject in school was geology, study of rocks and fossils.
Oh, heavens.
Yeah. So I got an O-level in geology. Yeah. So,
okay. I've got one too.
Yeah, it was, and it was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. So yeah, it's the dividends it's paid working in logistics has been amazing.
Yeah, well, no, you're good at business change, so you're good at metamorphosis anyway.
Very good.
There we go. It was actually going to be my choice of degree, but life intervened and I became a chemist instead.
Indeed, yeah.
But there you go. So who's inspired you the most in your career and why?
Okay, so I've worked for a few inspirational people. So, Malcolm, I have to say, and I don't want to put you on the spot while we're chatting, but actually really loved working with you and the team at Heinz. Found the way that you dealt with some of the issues that we came across with suppliers immensely well.
I'll give you that £10 note later, Bob.
No problem. That's fine. Sean Foley, great guy. Worked with Sean quite a lot over the years. Visionary, absolutely great guy to work for. Has 10 great ideas a day. Of which you can probably use one, but the man is an absolute visionary, and I'm wasting some of the things that I've seen him working in. I met a guy who wasn't from my working life, who was played quite a big instrumental part in me and my personal development, which was a gentleman called Rob Cook, and I met him in a church in Aldridge a few years ago, and the guy was just amazing. He was calm, he was considered, he never raised his voice. He was just such a lovely, lovely guy to spend time with. And actually, I took quite a bit of learning from Rob. I spent quite a bit of time with him doing some youth work and stuff. And he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I've come into TPN, and Mark Kendall is really, really great guy. Great guy. He joined this business about 17 years ago as a shift manager. Worked his way through, became ops director, went through a couple of buyouts. It was then bought by sort of Eddie Stobart Group, and then it was bought by Kalina just over sort of 12, 14 months ago. And he started his life out as a professional footballer.
Wow.
But really, really great guy. And I'm learning, from him.
The number of logistics leaders I've been speaking to recently that, turned around and said they wanted to be a professional footballer. You've got an example there of I've done that, now I want to go and work in logistics. I think that's interesting. That really is interesting.
Yeah. And every day is still a skill day for me. I learned so much from the guy, Taylor. He's really, really good at his job. Knows this industry, certainly this business sector and this business, inside out, upside down and back to front.
So if I asked you, and it can be anything, what are you most proud of?
My family, my kids, without shadow of a doubt.
For sure.
Yeah.
No,
sure.
They're wonderful. No, they're wonderful. And what do you wish you would have known when you started your career that you know now?
I think, for me, I may have taken a completely different path. I think I'd have done, I maybe have even gone and done armed forces. I'd gone and seen a bit of the world and done some travel and that sort of thing before, but careers advice for me, Malcolm, when I left school all them years ago, back in the 70s, was, right, do you want to go in the army or do you want to do an apprenticeship? And that was it. There was no real options. And from my whole sort of year group that left school, 6 people stayed on to do sixth form.
I find careers advice from our generation was always interesting. I mean, I did reasonably well academically.
Yeah.
And so I went to my careers advisor and they just said, well, can't do anything for you. You're just going to go to university, aren't you? I was thinking, well, yeah, you're putting real effort into your job. Thank you very much for that,
Cheers.
So, I don't know, call out to really good career advisors,
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're trying to do for people, really, in terms of these interviews, is saying, well, actually, we're giving you a piece of good career advice, that this is a really good industry to come into. But we'll come to that a little bit further on.
Yeah, okay.
So what's motivating your team at TPN right now? What are you facing?
Oh, okay. So I think we've got some challenges coming because we're moving premises sort of March time next year. So we're planning and preparing for that. It's a distance from where we are. So, there might be some turnaround of staff, and we're expecting that as a business and planning for that. The bit that's motivating us is the one thing that TPN stands for is that it's always quality of service above volume. And due to that fact, and due to the fact that that has been their mantra, actually the volumes come. So in the last sort of 3 months, we've become the number 1 network in the UK for volume. So having that volume and still trying to maintaining those service levels is a real challenge every day for the team. And they rise to the challenge every single day. And the partners as well, they're amazing. They go out and deliver the freight. We do the easy bit, really. We're like the glue that holds that network together in the middle. And that. There is a lot of passion, motivation, and from quite a young team. And, some of the guys down in the ops office, we're under 12-month service. So they're coming to this industry and they're learning it.
Okay. I mean, look, I know the Pallet Networks reasonably well. I haven't worked with TPN, but that is as much as anything else as a result of me doing, I've had various phases of my career, but I've worked with a lot of them, and they generally do a very impressive and complex job. I'm also old enough to remember what was the world like before the Pallet Networks and regional depots, and I still remember going around a few of those and thinking, how can they find anything? And, all right, you only deliver to this location once every 2 weeks, and, the costs are high, and there's no traceability, and all of that. I mean, certainly the Pallet Networks were part of a service revolution, without a shadow of a doubt. So really interesting. So what surprised you about the logistics industry recently? Is there anything that you've gone, ooh?
I think we've gone through sort of perfect storm over the last couple of years, haven't we? So COVID, not being able to get drivers, Brexit, this Exodus. I did a piece of work for, before I joined TPN, I did a piece of work for somebody, and, we were looking at like 130,000 drivers just not available anymore. COVID hit, and the older ones all said, well, I'll hang my boots up, and, a mass went back to Eastern Europe, the Eastern European bloc, and then obviously the 28,000 drivers a year that become newly passed drivers weren't taking the tests for a couple of years. So we rode this perfect storm. That actually put quite a bit of pressure onto the pallet network sectors, because you saw that consignment size, which has always typically been 1 to 4 pallets, 10s and 12s, and because they hadn't got the drivers to consolidate it onto a vehicle and get it delivered. So it did put massive pressure onto some of the network businesses.
Thank you. So what's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Okay, so I think from my early days in Christian Salverson, being a bit hot-headed and a bit bullshit and all the rest of it, the one thing that I've learnt in life, Malcolm, is that, and I'll give this advice to any manager at any level in any business, is you've got to be fair with people. You've got to be fair with people, but you actually need to treat people how you would expect people to treat you. So irrespective of the conversation you're having, whether that's an easy conversation, a pat on the back and a bit of reward, or whether that's a difficult conversation because you're trying to change someone's behaviour or they've done something that's not right, there's still a way to do that. And that for me is probably the biggest learning I've had in my career.
And it's a good learning, and it is about mutual respect. And
yeah.
I, as a kid, I read The Water Babies, and I always remember Mrs. Do As You Be Done By.
Yeah.
And I think, that is a really good life mantra to really have.
Yeah.
And what do you feel has changed during your career? And I will say that you're a youthful, mature person.
Thank you.
There you go. But a bit older than me. But what has been the keynote changes that you've seen since starting, and then where things are now? What really stands out to you?
So technology plays a massive part in the logistics sector now. And from days when I first started, when everything was done on a piece of paper with a pencil and an eraser, and you'd plan the route 10 or 20 times, and you'd be rubbing things off different routes and building routes on clipboards with delivery notes, to some of the technology that's available now for this industry. It's amazing. And do you know what? I actually love technology. I love the advance of technology. I'm not a geek, but the fact that, I love my iPhone, I love my tablet, I've got a laptop, I do stuff on computers. For me, the advancement of technology in our industry has been amazing. I think we've got some challenges to come over the coming years, electric vehicles and congestion zones and all the other bits that are going to affect our business. But the technology definitely, for me, is the thing.
I'd certainly agree with you. I mean, I'm of the generation. My first sort of supply chain job was as a production planner, and my only piece of tech was pocket calculator.
Yeah.
And did it on whiteboards and graph papers, and this was a 15 production line food factory.
Yeah.
And you were scheduling all of the packaging and all of the refining of everything. And I can still remember, if you like, the rules of engagement today. I could plan it today because it was hardwired into my head. And I think it's an interesting question in terms of technology, and I'm a great supporter of it. I pushed for a hell of a lot of innovation, certainly in the field of logistics, procurement or sourcing. It's when you move so far away from the actual physical manual operation, what understanding is lost. And I think this is why process mapping becomes incredibly important to really push this back in. But that's really geeky of me, maybe, to talk about process mapping. So I'm going to give you a free pass out, Bob. I'm going to give you an opportunity. What occupation other than your own would you like to try? What would you like to do?
I think I'd like to try something completely different to logistics.
Uh-huh.
So if I had the chance, what would I do? I think I would probably head in the direction of doing something for a charity, or helping people less fortunate than myself, working with the homeless. I did some voluntary work as a street pastor a few years ago. And whilst it's quite horrific, some of the things you have to pick up and deal with on the street on a Saturday evening, actually, the joy and benefit you get from that.
No, and again, I know you well, and I know how important that your faith is to you, and I have utter admiration, really for that. We all need some code to actually live by, and without anything else that perhaps might fit better, it's a damn good start, and good on you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
In the last few minutes of the interview, I'd like to focus on giving advice to people considering a career in logistics. So, do you think it's a good idea for people to consider whether it be logistics or supply chain industry as a top 3 career choice? And if you do think it's a good idea, you might say, heaven's sake, after all this time, I've had enough. You might say, no, don't do it. But if you do say yes, why? Why is it such a good choice?
Okay. And I think, logistics has been really good to me, Malcolm. From them days when engineering died in the Black Country and I went driving a 7.5 ton truck for Christian Salverson, there's never been a period in my life where I've not been working. So, there's always work. There's always been work. There's always been the opportunity to advance my career. I joined Christian Salverson driving a 7.5-ton truck, and 11 years later when I left, I was general manager of one of their biggest sites. So there's that opportunity if people recognise your skills. I think we miss a trick in logistics. I think we don't explain to people the opportunities, because in logistics, we have salespeople, we have accountants, we have all of these sectors, customer service people, human resources staff. So there are masses and masses of opportunity in logistics that people think, well, I don't want to drive a truck, or I don't want to drive a forklift truck. But there is a wealth of jobs within the logistics industry that we need to fill. We did an exercise a few years ago when I worked at Bidvest with a fantastic guy called Pete Thornton, who was head of training and development. And we went out to a couple of colleges to talk to 17 and 18-year-olds about coming into our industry, just to purposely sell that message that we're not just after people to pick boxes, drive trucks. This is about if you're either a budding accountant or you've got a flair for sales, there are other opportunities in logistics rather than just driving a truck.
Well, I think it has been a period of change within the logistics industry, but it is going to accelerate. And let's not forget, I still view Amazon, it's a logistics business, it's a logistics and supply chain business, just with a bit of marketing front end. I know I keep on repeating that, but they're beginning to compete in the logistics sector, so you can see the actual crossover.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the challenges are going to be, we're probably going to have further automation. I'm not a great believer in autonomous vehicles, except within given boundaries. But in terms of, let's say, automation within a warehousing environment, I can see a place and a point for that.
Yeah.
More than anything else, I think the biggest change is, how do we do things more sustainably? How do we actually use our intelligence and the potential intelligence, so it's both human intelligence and artificial intelligence, how do we use those to get a better solution for the way we do things today? I think that, for me, for anybody that is coming, if you want to come into an industry that has got, it's probably about the warmest welcome you could ever imagine in terms of coming to work for any industry. You are part of a big family.
Yes. Yeah.
And to a large extent, you've got the opportunity for such fantastic complexity and interest within the industry, and you've got to have and see it change. You've got to shape it into something that is more sustainable, and that will impact everything.
Yep.
It will impact, yes, the vehicles that are used, but it will also impact how those vehicles are scheduled and planned. Yes. And I think the other key challenge is, I'd like to get some really smart minds in that says, can we be cost effective? And I'm going back to Telford now.
Yeah.
Can we be cost effective, and can we make it a more attractive job for a person to be in? And I think we damn well can.
I agree.
And
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I really, really do. And I think the essence there is that, we've got to ask the rich questions in order to be able to get to the right answers.
Yeah.
And I'm desperate to find the right answers that really engage everybody, from the shop floor app. All right, I'll say it correctly. From the sharp end that is the real wealth creators, to everybody that is there to enable them to do their job in the best way, which is the way I think I'd reflect it.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody starting out?
For me, the advice I would give them is, actually don't be afraid to try different areas of logistics. Try and get a breadth of knowledge of the industry. So, apprenticeships now into logistics are great because you get to work around all the different departments. I mean, we ran a driving apprenticeship at Bidvest where guys would come in, they would spend first 12 months in the warehouse, where our product was processed, how it was picked, how it was palletised. Then they'd go on to loading vehicles, then they'd move into the traffic office, see how it was planned. Whilst this was going on, we were working on the driving skills in the background. So we're putting them through their car test to start with, then through their, up through the classes of their LGV licences. It was amazing apprenticeships. And I think there's real opportunity for people, because actually, whilst you go in and think, actually, I'm going to be a driver, or you go in and think, actually, I'm going to be an accountant, your other skills will develop within that arena. And one thing I found in the logistics industry, there are a lot of people who are really good at spotting talent. So if they see somebody and they think, you've got some real skills, I was really lucky when I worked in Salton in my early days. There was a lady who was sort of head of development within Christian Salton called Annie Hall, and I was one of the lucky ones. I got spotted. So my career path went really quickly from driving a truck to being an operations manager of a warehouse, because they spotted, hopefully they spotted some talent. Well, I'm still doing a bit, so I must be doing some stuff right.
There's no doubt about that. And again, genuinely, I still regard you as absolutely one of the best operational leaders that I've had the pleasure to work with. And
Thank you, Malcolm.
Bob knows me well enough to say if I didn't believe that, I'd tell him. I would actually say,
would, yeah.
I would.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, I would. No,
Indeed.
But look, Bob, it has been such a pleasure to have a little bit of a chat with you, and hopefully we can have another chat perhaps in a period of time and see how things are developing. I mean, I'd love to, when you're in your new facility, I'd actually like to hear about how's it going and what's it doing, because we had, and I'm sorry to the listener, we had a bit of a sneaky catch up before the podcast, but I'm really sort of quite excited about what they're building there. I think it sounds like you're applying a lot of smarts to your hub design in TPN, so
Indeed.
I'm all intrigued. So
I'd love to share with you after the event, Malk. Yep, definitely.
So look, Bob, I thank you most kindly. And I wish you well.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Logistics Collective podcast. We publish on www.logisticscollective.com, and you can register on there and you can get some reminders. You can also interact with us. You can send us voice messages. And what do we have coming? We have a whole list of people that I'm due to interview. Quite how I'm going to squeeze it all in around a fairly busy consulting life, I don't know. But this is a pleasure and a passion of mine, and I hope you find it as perhaps entertaining as I do. It's lovely to talk to people.
You can get in contact by email, podcast@logisticscollective.com, or leave a voice message on our website, logisticscollective.com. The podcast is a production by Leguru.